Hi, I'm Ceren.
Hi, I'm Kait.
Hi, I'm Liv.
In the recent weeks leading up to today, we've been watching a lot of queer cinema to get a general understanding and concept of the way these films are made and portrayed.
And we're going to start by looking at the non-binary aspect. We chose Rocky Horror Picture Show for this section. We chose this film because we thought it was a good representation of non-binary, as Frankenfurter, one of the main characters in Rocky Horror Picture Show. He's a transvestite, so although he's referred to as he in the film, it's a little unclear where what his gender is, what his sexuality is. He appears to have a very broad sexuality. He has multiple partners like Brad, Janet, Rocky, who he made for himself, and Columbia. It was even inferred that they had a previous relationship.
Yeah, I think a lot of the characters, honestly, just have that really, androgynous feel. They don't really have a specific gender or even sexuality that they lean towards. I feel like that kind of it leads to a lot of, connections among different characters that get messy. Most of them are sexual, I feel like. You would agree?
Definitely.
They weren't making actual connections. They really were just focused on the sex part of everything and not really getting to form those bonds with each other.
Yeah, I feel like when they were characterized to be so, sexual, I don't know, did you think it was, good or bad that they characterized Frankfurter as, really sexual?
I feel like it was a negative portrayal because I also think it's a generalization, because notice how all of them in the house are from transsexual Transylvania, and they're all portrayed as very hypersexual and even a little perverted, especially, the crossing a line with Brad and Janet in the scene where Frankenfurter is approaching Janet pretending he's Brad, but she later reveals that it's actually Frankenfurter the whole time, and the same thing with Brad as well.
Yeah, it's that. I thought that scene really threw me off because it's definitely morally wrong, and I feel like we can all recognize that. And it's what are they really trying to push while representing, having this character represent non-binary people and us looking at it as morally wrong, let alone the ending. I feel like he ended up completely alone, you know?
Yeah, he never got to make those connections, and that's what it showed us throughout the whole film, because he was only worried about those sexual connections, and he ended up alone, just like how he was in the beginning.
And he was even called out on it when Columbia says that he just sucks the life out of everybody and he can't form a real relationship with people.
Yeah, I feel like it's meant to show, this character that we followed along representing non-binary people, are we supposed to think all non-binary people are hypersexual, perverted, and meant to end up alone? Just like our last film, which really focused on, I felt relationships that couldn't really progress, mainly just because of their own sexuality, but gay cinema had a really good depiction of that, just because of the central theme of shame. The three movies that we chose, or which ones we actually watched, were Brokeback Mountain, Moonlight, as well as Boys in the Band, which all carried that central theme of shame.
Shame was especially depicted in Brokeback Mountain, when Ennis and Jack had this whole relationship that carried on throughout their entire life, despite the fact that they were married to different women. They carried this relationship in secret because they were so full of shame, and it's actually even insinuated that Jack was killed because it was found out that he was a homosexual and somebody murdered him simply for that fact. So they carry around a lot of shame around their sexuality in this film, and they never get to really live their lives freely.
I also think that Moonlight shared the common theme of shame to gay people, because the main character, his real name was Chiron, but they called him Black when he was growing up because he was just this black man, they didn't really have anything else to characterize him, and when he turned gay, they weren't really his friends. His classmates beat him up, talked bad about him, said this isn't right, and he didn't grow up in a great environment either, so it's nobody really taught him or showed him the ways. And as he grew up, he went to jail and stuff. He could never really truly find his identity in that moment, because
Juan in the beginning had to help take on, not his own personality, but he took on Juan's personality instead,
He couldn't be his own person.
And all that societal shame kind of made him internalize it, and to the point where when he grew up, he couldn't live freely because even though there was no bullies from school beating him up anymore, all of that shame was internalized within him toward his own sexuality.
I feel like another movie that really, like, it's more of an internalized kind of, but it catches you towards the end is Boys in a Band. That one I thought was really interesting because throughout the whole movie you're kind of, like, confused by his aggression towards his friends, you know, the anger that he takes out on them. But it's, towards the end it stems when he's finally called out on it by his close friend that it's like, no, it's your own emotions that you're reflecting on others. It's that similar, like, you can't find your own identity, so you're looking for it in others or criticizing others.
And you're trying to, like, copy another person's identity.
And on the outside, it, like, seems like they've come to terms and not come to terms, but they're comfortable with their sexuality because they're all, for the most part, openly homosexual, but it's kind of revealed towards the end how much shame and hate that they carry on themselves simply on the fact that they're homosexual.
It's interesting because in Brokeback Mountain, it's almost the opposite. It's like they're so comfortable in being straight that, like, obviously homosexuality for that time period is off-putting to them, but, like, in this time period of Boys in a Band, it's almost reversed, you know, like, not being as as gay as you can be or as comfortable with your gayness is almost the perverted thing.
The concept of shame also carries in Boys in the Band because as open and seemingly comfortable with the sexuality that Michael shows, he still feels like he can't tell his Alan, his college roommate or friend, that he's gay. He doesn't want him to know. He doesn't want him to see the homosexual characteristics that him and his friends share. He's still carrying that shame, even though he, on the outside, pretends to be so comfortable with it.
Each movie definitely shows how they carry their baggage throughout their life. You
Yeah,
know?
I feel like whether
it's like a baggage, you know?
Whether they're closeted,
Yeah.
like in Brokeback Mountain, or whether they're out in Boys in a Band, I felt like that shame still carries over in gay cinema.
And I feel like I just want to see a gay film where the characters can live freely and they don't have to carry the shame their whole life.
Worry.
Because all of the films end with they're still so full of shame and unable to live freely.
You would expect lesbian films to carry the same shame as the other queer genres, but in the film that we watched called Kissing Jessica Stein, that one shows a very one-sided, perspective of lesbianism.
Yeah, I feel like it only really shows, like, the really fun, positive, like, it's almost shown to be, like, a sexy kind of sexuality, you know? Like, when in the movie Jess is coming out to her close work friend, you would expect maybe some mixed feedback, maybe even homophobic, but really she just gets positive reviews. She gets, wow, really, Jess? That's so raunchy. And, like, especially coming from you, because Jess is characterized to be, like, a very reserved, like...
perfect.
Like,
straight.
Very conservative.
Yeah.
So for her friend to be like, wow, so raunchy, it's, like, fun.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of overwhelming support that you wouldn't expect from the movie. Like, when her mom figures it out, she's just like, oh, she's a really nice girl. And even, like, her grandmother, who, like, has some weird difficulties with it, it's not even really homosexual or homophobia. It's more, she says, but she's flat-chested. Like, it's very clear that her grandmother is just very picky, and it's not really a homophobic place. But I feel like it's also portrayed that the characters that are reacting to this news are taking it less seriously. Like when Kait was saying her coworker had a positive reaction to it, it also was more of just like a sexual reaction to it. Like she's like, wow, I'm impressed. I can't even get my husband to use the sex toys that I bought. But it's like initially just like, oh wow, you have a really cool sex life. But she's having a real relationship with this woman that's more than just sex.
It was like that in the bar scene, too. You remember when the guys were like, oh, this is so sexy, you know, girl-on-girl action, but...
They never really took their relationship seriously. Even when they left, they were like, girls really know how to take care of each other. But they never are left with the impression of, oh, these two women are together in an adult relationship.
Yeah, I feel like that also kind of shows, like, it's, like... lesbianism itself is almost like a good thing if it's catered to men. Like if men are observing it and like get to benefit from it, then yeah, it's a great time. But like I don't know. I feel like
it's just called a phase on the other hand, you know?
And I think ultimately what I didn't really like about this movie was the way that it was kind of all boiled down to a phase. Because at the end of the day, they break up and she says, well, I think that I'm just your best friend. I don't think that you are like in a romantic relationship with me. I think we have a platonic relationship. And it's even inferred that she might have something going on with Josh at the end with the last interaction that we see between them. So it's kind of just implying that the whole thing was just a phase that she was going through, and it's not really taken seriously.
It kind of got me thinking, like, if the other lesbian in the relationship had been the main character, we would have followed a genuine lesbian relationship following after the movie had concluded. But instead, when we followed Jess, it's like all we got to see of lesbian relationships was just that it's a phase and it ends.
It would have taken a totally different path if we were to follow the other girl because she actually had a genuine connection.
Because Helen does end up with another woman at the end of the day, but for Jess, it's just kind of boiled down to, oh, you were confused and you went through this phase.
Yeah. It's like she got to be more open-minded by trying out this fun and sexual experience, but ultimately it's not serious and it's not permanent.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to compare and reflect on the different ways that these subcategories of queer cinema is portrayed.
Yeah, I feel like non-binary individuals are just shown as sexual, perverted beings who can't even establish real, genuine relationships.
The films make it seem like the gay connections are shameful and
almost as if, like, no homosexual man can have a comfortable relationship with his sexuality, and it's all about shame and hate.
Yeah, when it's like with women, there's not necessarily always that ounce of shame, but it's just not taken as a serious relationship, a genuine one.
Yeah, it's not as, like, negatively reflected in society, but it's not taken so seriously.
Yeah, I feel like I want to see a genuine queer film with, like, a genuine relationship of them both loving each other, like, having both, like, the romanticized and, like, the sexual life, obviously, but it's, like...
showing their identities as their sexual... like, showing their sexual identities without reducing it to...
Mm-hmm.
I want to see somebody living their truth and being happy with themselves. I don't think they should be, I'm happy with my life despite the fact that I'm a homosexual. I think it should be, I am a person and I'm living a life and I'm really happy with it. I have a healthy relationship, and I don't think it should carry all this shame and stereotypes with it, which I know is controversial, but...
Lesbians?
Wait, hold on.
I thought it was done, I'm sorry.
That's a good transition.
So it's really interesting to reflect and compare how the different subcategories of these queer... Hold on, I'm sorry.
Everybody else had impacts to it.
I feel like for the gay
I was about to say, I bet definitely... Hi, I'm Ceren.
Hi, I'm Kait.
Wait, is this for real?
Alright, no, we're gonna